Welcome to Blue Hour, a podcast for seekers and thinkers, creatives and dreamers. Through story, conversation, and heart-centered guidance, we blend practical wisdom with magical inquiry. Here, we explore the convergence of shadow and light, the mysteries of life, and the musings of the soul. Please join us as we expand our consciousness, empower our purpose, and infuse our lives with more wonder, love, and beauty. Hi, I'm your host, Adina Cooper, shadow guide, holistic therapist, artist, mother, lover, burgeoning crone, and very curious person.
Hi, I'm your host, Roberta Anderson, astrologer, home witch, musician, cat lover, stargazer, and very curious person.
Imagine you've wandered into the forest and have stumbled upon a charming little cottage deep in the woods. I'm tending to the fire.
And I'm preparing tea. Thanks for joining us, and welcome to today's episode.
Welcome, dear listeners, to another episode of Blue Hour. I am here with the beautiful Roberta Anderson, and we are welcoming onto the show today Natasha Ramlall. Natasha is an embodied integration coach. She works with high-functioning, capable women who feel the ground cracking beneath them after a difficult life transition or an awakening to a mismatched life. Guiding towards healing and expansion, she helps people evolve from an identity rupture as they navigate the space between who they were and who they are becoming. Welcome, Natasha.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I am wondering if we can start with your story, because I am imagining that you are doing this work because you've been there. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about, the work, a little bit more about the work that you do and how you got there.
Sure. If it's okay, I might go way back to the beginning just to sort of give a little bit of context. So I kind of grew up an only child of immigrant parents. And so there's sort of this inherited level of, fear and kind of over prioritizing safety and security at the expense of presence. That's, jumping right in there. But just this idea that it's not safe to not be hyper vigilantly thinking about the future at all times. And in order to do that, kind of sacrificing the present. So, I didn't have a terribly traumatizing childhood myself, although my father did. And so I do think that carried forward in a few ways. But there wasn't a lot of play. There wasn't a lot of, easygoing, be in the moment kind of energy in the home. And so it wasn't until I was in my early 20s and I decided to leave and go travel on my own. And I went abroad. I went to Southeast Asia. And that was the first time that I really kind of understood myself without those tethers to, relationships, routines, structure, all of the things that I had used to define myself, to understand myself. Those were all stripped away. So it was the first time that I actually got to be with me and what I wanted, what I liked to do, and, the parts of myself that felt like they were genuinely mine and not responses or masks or ways of, feeling safe around other people. And it was a really beautiful time. I was sort of coming into a different way of understanding myself. And, young 20s, it was a really beautiful time. Um, but I also, at that point, met the man who became my husband. And that whole thing just kind of happened really quickly. So, we fell in love after a couple of years. We got married and then we got pregnant on our honeymoon. And because he is from the other side of the world, it was like a mad dash to get back to Canada where my home is. Um, and kind of start to create some stability for this baby that was coming, and start the sponsorship process. So in a very short time, in about 10 months, I kind of went from this carefree young girl in her 20s who was learning about who she was to wife, mother, working. And it was just like survival mode came on strong. And I forgot about all those parts of me that had been waking up to this new thing. And I didn't have the language for it at the time, but looking back, I can see that it was kind of this sympathetic, um, fight energy, just sort of like get stuff done, show up, be a good wife, be a good mother, do all the right things, get the job, do all the things to, came back to that blueprint of sacrifice the present in order to create a secure future. And that was pretty much my MO for like the next 2 decades. And I had a few nudges along the way, health diagnoses and things like that, but I was able to find band-aids for those things and continue pushing forward until I got into my 40s and chronic back pain stopped me in my tracks. And it was like, nope, you're not going any further. You need to turn all of your attention to healing now because you're not going to be able to push through life like you've done in the past. And so that was really a big catalyst for me because it had me focusing on healing, and that brought me to the mind body health work that just lit me up. And kind of, through the process of learning how to care for my own body, I realized, oh my goodness, these are all the things that I've always been kind of craving and looking for. And I just ignited this passion for learning, and it started me on this journey. So I kind of entered that world, had one foot in that world, but also my career that I had been in for 20 plus years, was working with adult newcomers to Canada, so teaching them English and helping them with settlement. But of course, at the heart of that work is really community and creating safety and, supporting people who are having a massive identity rupture, because
Mm.
most of them didn't choose to move to Canada. Most of them were refugees and were forced to come here. Um, so that was something that I had been immersed in for a really long time. But the work itself, I kind of had reached my growth edge with, and I was feeling drawn to enter this new area of mind body health. I just wanted to be in that all the time. And so I kind of navigated both worlds for a little while. And then I made the decision to, um, first I cut back and then I eventually left. And that was pretty recent. That was just last year that I retired from that career fully. And then I had another rupture, which was this completely different experience of rupture. And that was sort of like a shutdown and a freeze state and I don't recognize myself in the mirror kind of thing. Um, and so this idea of identity rupture has kind of been at the heart of what I've been doing all the way along. But now I'm understanding it more through the lens of women and women at midlife. And it's such a common thing to happen. And I think the reason is because we can only sustain that fight pushing energy for so long. And eventually it's just not going to do anymore. It's just not going to, we just can't sustain that kind of orientation to life. And it's usually around this time where women are kind of like, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. And sometimes that is, a nudge that becomes intolerable. So they are forced into a choice. Or sometimes it happens to them, they lose a job not by their choice, a relationship ends not by their choice, they have a health scare not by their choice. But either way, it is such a profound moment of possibility, and an opportunity to kind of change the trajectory of our life. And so that's where I have sort of landed in my work currently, is really supporting women who are at that messy point where the old thing is no longer something that they can define themselves by, but the new thing isn't clear yet, and it's deeply uncomfortable. So that was a bit of a ramble. I hope I answered the question enough to get going. But
You did. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. And I can hear in that how just the pieces weave together from the trajectory you were on, the career you've worked, and then where you are now. And as a woman at this stage of life myself, I really identify personally with what you're sharing. And it's been really fascinating to me, going through this journey into menopause and this stage of life and the Chiron return and this whole transformational space, I guess, really is it's seismic, It's like this intense upheaval happens. I agree with you. I think no matter what, whether it's like chosen changes and you awaken to something or something happens, but no matter what, this stage of life seems to bring a lot of upheaval and shifting. And I don't think it's accidental. I think, we're meant to to really step more fully into our power at this phase of life. And so much of that demands unlearning. So you spoke of your upbringing and kind of what you learned from that family structure, the family of origin. But also we get all these cultural messages and societal messages about what it means to be a woman in the world and how we're supposed to be. And I have found at this stage of midlife that so much of this work is like shedding. So much of that doesn't resonate anymore or never it forced me to be someone I didn't intend to be or was never supposed to be. So that makes me curious about going back to your story, this young woman who was like finding herself and starting to feel into that. Where is she now?
oh, so much of what you said, I resonate with fully, because yeah, it's been a process. There's so many layers. And okay, so there is the family of origin piece, understanding that our life is now, and that for so many decades I was holding this illusion that I could control the outcomes of my life if I just made the right choices, if I just made the right decisions, if I was just good enough in
Mhm.
all of the different, aspects of my life, all the different roles that I was playing and holding. And that, I think is a really important illusion for us to reckon with. And I think that when we come to that place, and we understand that control is not about um, choosing correctly in order to manipulate, the most desired outcome. Control is about learning how to manage your own emotional and energetic life. And manage, I say manage, but within manage, it's more about accepting and allowing and just learning how to be with the whole of what that feels like and what that means day to day. Then culturally, we live in this very hyper productive, fat, and I mean, I'm, I, I was born in 1975, so I am in this period right now of massive nostalgia for the years when I remember things just being a bit slower and a little bit quieter and a little bit less frantic and noisy. And like it's a real grief. Like I'm so longing for that. And it's difficult to find pockets of that today. Um, so that cultural piece of go, 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 get stuff done, keep up is completely at odds with the version of us that needs to slow down enough to be in our body and be able to listen in stillness to our intuition and to all of the information and the data that's going to help us be in our life in a more real way, inhabit our life, rather than perform our life and just, hope that we're performing it properly. So those two have been really, really big pieces. And then the fact that, as you mentioned, being in perimenopause, also while these ruptures are happening, it's just like this big flurry. The messy middle is so, so messy and so, so uncomfortable. And I believe that all of the different, stages that we go through in these transitions, there's, the ending, and then there's this messy part, and then there's a new beginning that eventually starts to take shape. Each one has its own lessons. Each one has its own opportunity for growth and evolution. And I think that this messy middle part is the main lesson is about learning how to trust. And for me, that's the hardest thing that I think humans have to learn how to do. And especially high functioning, hyper capable women who are used to being so efficient, so organized, and keeping it all together. Um, Being able to actually believe that there is something holding you through this and that you're allowed to be where you are, whether that's, a non productive, maybe a version of yourself who's dealing with some mental struggle or some chronic physical pain, all of it, allowing yourself to be there and surrendering to the fact that it is going to eventually work itself out. Like life is going to unfold, and there's nothing that you can do to force the outcome to be different than it's going to be. And so, yeah, that part of really slowing down enough to be able to inhabit our body is about the movement out of being in the head into the integrated human, which is the stories of the mind, but also the emotional, energetic body, the ego, and the spirit, and bringing all of those different things in. So like all of that and all of it's happening all at the same time. And so it's beautiful and it's also super challenging.
I feel, yeah, I feel like super challenging is an understatement for that. I went through my life completely falling apart in my mid 30s, so I did this a little early. And one of the things that I felt like I went through was like a chrysalis stage. So, like, I was a caterpillar munching along, everything was going great, I was happy. And then the chrysalis of life formed around me and I became goo. And that's what when you say the messy middle, I think of like being goo inside a chrysalis before I became the butterfly, like in that state. And I just feel like there's so much wisdom to what you're saying about the need for acceptance and surrender and to just that level of trusting the universe that everything will work out. And that was the hardest thing for me, being a being the type of woman that you work with. And it was just so hard for me to let go and to trust and be like, okay, well, it'll all eventually work out again. So I feel curious how you supported yourself through the messy middle and how you support the women that you work with as they move through what I refer to as the goo stage.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that it's really it's a real reorientation to how we're being in our life. And you talk about that gooey part and how difficult it is to lean into trust. And what I've find is that it's never you get there and then you're good, but it's like this daily moment to moment recentering back into that understanding and recognizing when we're out of balance, when we're, there's different phases even in the goo, because there's like these sub phases within that middle part where you might be kind of leaning more into your masculine energetically and pushing and trying to, get things done and take action and create things to support yourself in that season. Or you might be like just in that freeze shutdown place where you're like, I just feel like I don't have capacity for anything. And I have to just let myself be this unrecognizable version and make space for her too. Um, and then we have the seasons where we're able to trust and we kind of feel into that flow and we feel into that supportive container that is there when we're able to access it, when we have the capacity to access it. And so it's kind of moving between all of those different places. Um, and what is, like the trust piece, I think, is also it's complex in itself because what does it mean? So there's this self-trust, which generally gets very shattered in that ending stage. And so there's, coming back to a place where you can start to believe that what happened was not because of a failed mechanism of trusting yourself, or that you didn't have enough self-trust, or that all these different stories that we tell ourselves when we're in that place of losing something. And then there's the soul trust, trusting in that there's something greater than us that's holding us through it. And then there's trust in the journey, that the journey is going to happen, it's going to work itself out, and the way that we orient ourselves to the journey is the only thing that we can really impact. So in my work with myself and in my work with others, what we're really doing is all of those different things that help us to get back into inhabiting our current experience and really being in our life. And for a lot of women that are, hyper capable, high functioning, it starts with getting out of the head and getting into the body because they've been in that survival state where they have to be in the head. We can't move at the pace that the world is asking of us if we're not fully, in the head and charging forward. I shouldn't say we can't. We can find a way to be more in balance, but in that survival state, we're really we're up in the head because it is the most functional place for us to be able to move at that pace. So coming back into the body is definitely ground zero. We need to learn how to be with our sensations, learn how to slow down, understand what emotions feel like in our body. And that really exists on such a spectrum for women because some women are a lot more easily able to be embodied, and for some women it feels incredibly unsafe to be in their body, and so it can take a lot of time and a lot of patience and repetition to be able to come into an experience of safety or even just neutrality in their body. So that would definitely be a starting point, is reconnecting to the body. But then again, all of the stories and understanding, why we hold those stories and what they mean for us, and how our impulse is to reject those stories and reject those things about us that we don't like. But the orientation is actually allowing it all to be part of our experience. And rather than getting rid of the stuff, we're actually learning how to integrate it into our experience and growing our capacity to hold all of that and understanding it's there because it's been supporting us. And it may not be something we need to carry forward, but it's also always going to be with us in some way because it's informed us. It's contributed to the wisdom that we carry, now and for forever. Um, it's such a difficult thing to talk about because it gets so wordy. It's one of those things where, like, when you're in it, you you understand it at such a deeper level. And I guess that's kind of the whole point, right? Like, when you're in your life, you understand it at such a deeper level as well.
I think you've communicated some things really, really well. And one thing that I want to note and really appreciate is what you've said about appreciating that each of these stages has like its gifts to offer. And we're here talking about the goo or the messy middle, and that's the one that's really hard to appreciate, right? Like we're in it and it feels terrible. And I appreciate what you're saying about how we're in this mental state because the world demands all this from us, and that's what we have to do to survive and like do the things. And also on like a subconscious level, the body is in an activated state, right? We're experiencing this survival mode and there's this nervous system activation. So the body is, even though we're not consciously embodied, it's doing what it needs to do to help us keep that energy all up there in the mind. And then it results in something like what you experienced in back pain with this alert of like, come back to the body with presence and awareness. So I was noting that when you were talking, and I was also thinking about how when you were talking about just how there's different aspects to being in the goo, it reminded me of being in labor and just the different phases and experiences of that, from oh, I can handle this or oh my God, this is so intense, to like what the hell is even happening, but the I guess my point of that is like the contractions, the expansion and contraction and the movement that happens when your body is physically birthing a baby is energetically very similar to being in that stage of um birthing it like yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you're bringing that in because so when I was saying that middle place, the biggest lesson about being in there is trust, is learning how to trust. And in that lesson, it's like that middle stage is like a microcosm of the bigger life experience, right? Because when we learn how to be in the cycles of that contraction and expansion, in that messy middle place where it's extreme and we have to really, really surrender in order to withstand it,
Yeah.
that is creating a blueprint for us to take into our lives moving forward, because our life is always going to be this contraction and expansion, even when we get past that messy, gooey middle of this specific rupture. And so it's like we go through it in the most challenging way in order to learn the trust, learn the embodiment of that, so that we can carry it forward into our life as a whole. And there's this beautiful metaphor that my mentor shared with me about a jellyfish. And if you picture a jellyfish moving through the water, that's exactly how they move through the waters, by contracting, and then they expand forward, contract, and that's what propels them forward. And if the water is their life, it serves as this gorgeous metaphor. Our orientation for moving through our lives and growing and evolving is to allow for that contraction in order to grow and propel ourselves forward in our lives. And so can we learn how to accept and be with the contraction as much as we accept and be with the expansion? And if we can learn that skill, then we completely change the orientation to our life. And I think that's, all of the different women that I've met, including the two of you and other coaches and other therapists and other healers of all different kinds, that is like the heart of what we're all doing, but we're just coming at it from all different ways of understanding it. But I think it's that, yeah, can we learn how to be in this life from the orientation of be with the contraction, be with the expansion, expect that to just continue always and forever.
It's huge. And, as I'm listening to you talk and I'm thinking about what it feels like to be in the contraction, it feels like the pain is interminable. It feels like you're stuck forever. And I love what you're saying about, this is wisdom to carry forward in life. This isn't just circumstantial or situational. This is how life is. We contract and we expand, and we contract and we expand. And when you just land there with that perspective to go, even if it hurts so bad and I feel stuck, to just know, but I'm not. The expansion will, and to cultivate that faith and that trust. And I would say also gratitude, which is what you're naming when you're saying like each of these stages has their gifts to offer. Ooh, that's really hard when you're in it. But wow, how empowering to recognize that I'm not stuck in this pain. It will move and it will come back, and it will move and it will come back. But yeah, I'm not stuck, and there's something to be grateful for in this, how it's pushing me forward.
Yeah. And I think you're right that to actually find the gratitude in the moment might be too much of an ask for a lot of women, and particularly in particular circumstances. But if we can find that gratitude, when when we have more capacity to look back on what's happened and what's transpired and how things have unfolded, ultimately how the whole thing, kind of take bird's eye view and understand how things have shifted in our lives because of the pain that we have experienced, and we find the purpose, it can serve as a reminder, or I've been there before. I've been here before. I can find some level of safety within the familiarity of being in this terrible state before. It's such a paradox, right? But and in that familiarity, there is safety, knowing that I can withstand more. Like I have a friend who she had a really terrible year a couple of years ago. She had, and she'd been through a lot of different ruptures leading up to this point already, with her relationship and different challenges. But she had a house fire, and she lost 2 pets in the house fire. And she's a single mom. And so for a year, she and her son were just, moving around from place to place, dealing with insurance and all these different things so that they could get their house rebuilt. And so it was a really, really challenging time for her, incredibly challenging, incredibly painful. And when she finally, got her home back together, was able to move back in and settled, and we were going for a walk, and I remember her saying, I feel so powerful because of what I have withstood. Like, I feel like I can, it's almost like her relationship with fear had completely shifted because she had moved through these things. And it was like, yeah, like life can bring what it's going to bring, because
Mm.
um I have so much belief in my own resilience and my own ability to withstand the most
Mhm.
painful things. And it was just, I mean, I get chills even remembering it now. Um, but yeah, like it's the going through it that helps to create the new up-leveled version that is ready for the next phase. Um, and yeah, yeah.
When you say that, I can't help but think of one of my, like, anthem songs for when I was going through it. Actually, 2 of them have come up in this conversation, and they've been kind of running in my head. And the first one is Modest Yahoo. He has a song, Surrender, and I must have played that 1,000 times, like, when I was going through it. But also, in kind of a different sub-phase of that middle messy part, there's this song by a local artist, Rising Appalachia, and it is, I Am Resilient. And I played that even more than I played Surrender. And it's so and when those songs come up for me, they, like, kinda bring back that time period of my life where I was really moving through it, and just how helpful music was and is, both in, like, the hindsight of looking back and being able to see the silver lining and the gift and find the gratitude. Because I very much agree with you. I did not have the capacity for gratitude when I was, like, really in the trenches. Like, that was but hindsight, that is, like, kind of one of the gifts of being able to look back is to recognize how resilient I've become and how I'm grateful for those parts of my journey that allowed me and gave me the opportunity to build strength like that. So,
I think that's beautiful, and I was wondering if how what she was saying was landing with you in the context of your personal experience. But I also want to name too that at least from my experience so far in my life and just where I'm at, gratitude also is comes in waves, right? Like even after the fact, even when you can go, yes, that experience made me stronger, but there's also, it's like holding the gratitude in one hand and the grief in the other hand, and they're both there.
Yeah.
And it's not like the gratitude overrides all the grief.
mhm.
And we have to, that's the accepting piece that you were talking about, Natasha. Like we have to accept and hold what is, and that includes both of those things, and they're both sacred.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. And I know, even, this is just one small example, but I remember moments where my chronic back pain would have me stuck in bed, and I like physically just couldn't do anything because the pain was really debilitating. And I remember having a moment lying in my bed thinking that I was so grateful that I had that bed
Mm.
to be in that moment, because there have been different stages of my life where, it would have been a lot more uncomfortable to have to be reckoning with that pain. But in that moment, I had that comfortable bed. I had, the sick days that I could use in order to take time off of work to rest. And so there was holding the two things at the same time. And I think when we think about, emotional spectrums, they're always two sides of the same coin. Like we think about grief, the only reason we experience grief is because we've loved something enough to feel the loss of it. And so if we can tap into sort of the other piece, the contrast to the suffering that's, has to exist in order for the suffering to exist, I think you're right. There can be a glimmer of a path back to gratitude in most things. But again, capacity and context, and I would never want to speak for anybody else's experience, but I can understand what both of you are saying, that I've had moments where I can't believe I was able to find gratitude in that moment because it was so challenging. I've also had moments where I'm not even going to go there right now because it feels like another thing I'm trying to make myself do. It's already hard enough kind of thing.
But I think what you were saying about the bird's eye view, to sum this up, like the point here really is like there's light and dark in life. There's pain and there's bliss. There's all of it. It's the expansion and the contraction forever. And when we can understand that and stop trying to control everything, because when we're trying to control everything, we're attempting to feel the good stuff as much as possible and resist the quote bad stuff. But when we can go this, like, surrender and flow, and like that's the challenge, that's a trick, but that's the wisdom. We are so much better resourced, and we end up having more bliss and more enjoyment because we're not spending so much energy efforting and resisting sometimes what inevitably is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so beautifully said.
I'm curious though, because we've talked a lot about the challenges and the phases in this, and in terms of your work and how you support women, I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about maybe different offers that you have. I think you have like one-on-one coaching, and like how else. Tell us a little bit about how you support women.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, the one-on-one is it's coaching, it's online, it's embodied integration coaching. So we're really bringing those 4 pieces back into an understanding of inhabiting the experience, inhabiting our life. But I also offer in-person group offers I facilitate groups locally to women in my community. My favorite one, my signature one, is embodied dance. It's called Freestyle Dance Alchemy. And, that is a really beautiful example of this work bringing in this beautiful thing that I never would have been able to experience if I hadn't, had all of these different ruptures that led me down this path. And now I can't imagine my life without it. And it's a beautiful program where we're sort of using dance as a modality to focus on the practice of embodiment and how to be present with ourselves. And, a lot of the participants kind of describe it as a mix between a dance class and a therapy session in a women's circle. And so if you imagine all the good parts of that kind of meeting in one space, so it's a really special offering. And then of course, that offer sort of opened up a whole other realm of different things that I enjoy facilitating. So then that was another stepping stone to understanding my ability to contribute in different ways that I could offer things for women that are supportive in the community. And so, kind of bringing it full circle to what we were talking about, one of the things that I've come to understand through this process is my old orientation was, okay, so you have the vision, it's supposed to look like this, and then you put it into place, and then that's what it's going to be. And that's what success looks like. And what I've found, at this point in my journey is that it's not working out that way. But it's more that when I learn to inhabit my own present experience, make space for that stillness and my ability to listen, I am inspired by projects. And when the right projects are meant to happen, I put my full energy and attention on that, and that happens. And that can be the group offers in person, but it's also, from client to client to client, because every single one is nuanced and different. And so even, I have my offer, but it really is something that's moldable to the person in front of me and what it is that they need in this moment. And reorienting my business in that way has been incredibly refreshing. And I think it's had me understand, like another cultural limitation that we hold on to is this idea that we make choices with the end looking a particular way. And if we're able to put that in motion and get to that end point, then it's a success. And again, life is just not like that, and I think about in relation to, for example, marriage, right? We make this decision, and if the relationship, comes to a completion, we see it as a failure rather than understanding that this is just the life cycle of this um, life project. And it's still a success. It's still completely beautiful. It's still whole, even though it isn't lasting forever. And so kind of bringing that orientation to all of the different things in life, our relationships, our work, our health, our, the different things that we're passionate about from phase to phase, things that we want to put our energy into. That's been a really beautiful shift as well, in how I'm showing up to life, how I'm showing up to my work. So yeah, just a lot of different projects, but the through line is this ability to come back into embodying and inhabiting our experience as it is.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that is incredibly beautiful. And I'm kind of going back a little bit, but I love that you're incorporating dance into
Mhm.
your work and just that embodiment and movement. And I mean, I just, as someone who loves to turn the music on and dance it out, I just know how cathartic that experience can be for me. And yeah, I just really love that that's part of what you're offering to women. So thank you
Yeah,
for that.
it was the thing that I loved as a child. So
Mhm.
when I was a kid, that was all I did all the time. And, I thought, well, my parents gave me this language, but I thought I was going to be a choreographer because that was all I wanted to do. And then, that whole idea that life and what you're supposed to be doing and what success looks like, and, the level that you need to be, that's the right word exactly. Understanding that the things that you're good at have to look a particular way in order for them to be a viable thing that to, be integrated into your work. Um, fell into that trap as well. So at a certain point, dance just didn't make sense. And so coming back to it and understanding dance less as a performative art in terms of, for me, I still love it as a performative art for others. But coming back to dance and sort of understanding that it has its own gifts that align with mind body work so beautifully and so naturally, was like the best thing ever, because it was like, oh my God, I come back to my favorite thing and somehow this makes sense in the work that I'm doing. It just felt like this coming home to myself, like this reclamation, this this truth moment where it was like, oh, this is what it feels like to feel aligned and,
Mhm.
you know, genuine.
The word reclamation is what was coming to my mind as I was hearing you speak. And I was also thinking about this dance offer and just noting going from being bedridden with back pain to embodied, what did you call it? Embodied alchemical dance?
So the offers freestyle dance alchemy.
Freestyle dance alchemy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really, that journey and all of what you're describing really speaks for flexibility and, in the very literal sense,
Right.
but also energetically. That's what we've been talking about, and being able to be less rigid and be flexible and move along with the energies around and within us is incredibly important. And the other thing that I'm noting in what you're sharing, both about the dance offer and just the way that you approach your work and how flexible it is depending on the person you're sitting with or who you're working with, is there's a creativity here, right? And this reclamation of this passion that you had as a child for dance and movement, and shedding the like rigidity of it has to look a certain way, and being open to that. Really, all of this also speaks for the value of creativity and imagination. When we hear the word imagination, we often think like, oh, frilly, frou-frou, unnecessary something. And the way that I approach the work that I do in the life that I live is that it's not that. It is essential. The soul speaks this language. And when we can learn how to listen and express ourselves creatively, by tuning into the imagination, there's just access to a deeper level of healing that words and their limitations, w- you know, can't quite get to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really love that you brought in this idea of flexibility, because it does feel like, if we kind of pan out a little bit again and we look at collectively in 2026, we're in this moment where coming into like embracing the ability to be flexible, embracing this rising feminine energy that's coming into the human experience at this time, both for women coming into their power more fully, and also men being able to embrace all of that beautiful feminine energy within them. And we're in a moment right now, right? Like things are shifting, things are happening. We're being challenged to a point where it's not tolerable to not um and we have to start really embodying and allowing this new way of being, in order to keep the world, evolving as it's meant to. And it feels like that's exactly why all of these things are leading us to this exploration, this ability to be more flexible, to be in the orientation of contraction and expansion. Because if we can practice and learn how to show up to life from that place, from that energy, from that lens, we will be able to withstand this big change that the world is experiencing, has been experiencing and will continue to experience, but in order to move us into a new thing. And it just feels like, yeah, everything's all just happening. It's divinely orchestrated, and so many people are feeling called to step in. So, coming into that messy, gooey, mucky middle that's so uncomfortable and so challenging, um, yeah, we're being called into that for a bigger reason than just our own,
Mhm.
personal reckoning, but it's like the training grounds for, a more collective shift that is also happening at the same time. And I just know that you guys know exactly what I mean.
Indeed, I feel that. I feel that in my bones.
And it's ripple effects. We do our work, we deal with our transitions and our identity crisis and reforming and all of that. And I just think energetically, the strength that we garner from that process ripples out and helps, helps the collective.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's the only way that it ever really can shift things is for us to do that work at an internal and individual level first.
So, if somebody is listening and wants to find out more about connecting with you, what do you suggest? What's the best way for them to do that?
Best way is just to jump on my website, humanistcoaching.ca, and everything that I'm doing can be found there through some thread. It's probably the easiest way. I'm not huge on social media, so website's always a great choice.
And is there anything that we have not touched on or asked you that you want to speak for or emphasize?
Only thing is that I have a free guided audio that I'd love to offer to the listeners if they're interested in, kind of landing in the body and talking about that ground zero of, reconnecting with their felt experience. And yeah, if you're able to post that in the show notes or something for your listeners, that would be wonderful. It's about 20 minutes. And it doesn't require much in anybody, just carving out that time and finding a comfortable place to listen. But I think that practice of resourcing the body is really step one if we want to come back into an integrated state.
Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely we'll post that link in the show notes. Thank you for the incredible work you're doing and for you taking the time to sit and talk with us. I really hope that people listening embrace the whole process of becoming and moving through challenging transitions in life, and especially the goo and the messy middle, like hang in there.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was a really beautiful opportunity to talk about these things with you, and I enjoy it. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you for being here, Natasha.
Thank you for listening to Blue Hour. If this conversation spoke to you, please share it. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please take a moment to rate and subscribe. If you'd like to dive deeper or explore working with us, you'll find more about our offerings in the show notes. We'll see you in the next episode. And until then, we leave you with these words from Rumi. Wherever you are, and whatever you do, be in love.